From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good morning and welcome to Montana This Morning. On this Tuesday, May 31st, we do have some breaking news this morning. Well, one suspect is dead and an officer is injured following an overnight police shooting in North Billings. The incident started as a traffic stop around 11 o'clock last night near the 1900 block of Burnstead Drive. And according to police, the suspect shot at an officer, wounding him. Police returned fire, killing the suspect. The injured officer has been treated for his wound and is okay. There is still a heavy law enforcement presence in the area, and the 1900 block of Burnstead is currently closed. And now it is time to get a quick check of the forecast with Ed. And how are we looking today, Ed, on this Tuesday?
Yeah, we got clouds around and still some showers, especially into the mountain foothills. Let's take a look at radar this morning. It's really just hugging into those foothills around Red Lodge, the higher elevations towards Cook City, and then also into the Bighorns. And we'll see some of this persist, and there's enough wind, Diane, that we're looking at still some winter driving conditions. Here's what's going on in some of the mountain foothills. Sherry shared this picture yesterday from around Nye, and you can see the very heavy water that's continuing to run off the mountain foothills there. We're going to see an increase in the streams and creeks. This is exceptional here, but we do have some localized flooding concerns. Sherry, thanks for sharing that one. And as far as the snow goes, check this one out from the Wyoming Department of Transportation, showing where we still are trying to clear out some of that mountain snow that redeveloped. Much of the high elevations, Beartooth picked up 1 to 3 feet of new snow, so a lot of the roadways that have been cleared are starting to get cleared all over again. For Billings, we'll look for temperatures today in the low 60s, but some of that cloudiness will stick around. I'll have the rest of the 7-day forecast coming up in just a little while.
All right, yeah, that snow up by Red Lodge. I saw other pictures too, some people camping out there and waking up to 24 inches of snow, I think is what they said. Yeah.
Right, and then and people were getting stuck in their campers, and the nice part was so many people that said their neighbors came around, people that were just camping out there, and everybody helped everybody out. And this was great to see. It's
great to see here in Montana. All right, well, thanks so much, Ed. Well, now to Ukraine, where Russia is using its devastating firepower to try and breach Ukrainian defenses. Russian bombs and shells are hitting the city of Kharkiv, which is under Ukraine's control, while fierce ground battles rage in the eastern part of the country. President Volodymyr Zelensky recently visited that city. He says 10 times more civilians have been killed since the start of the war than military personnel. The FDA is investigating an outbreak of hepatitis A, likely linked to organic strawberries. So far, no cases have been confirmed in Montana, but one infection was discovered in North Dakota and another in Minnesota. The strawberries were sold between March 5th and April 25th under the brand name Fresh Campo or HEB. Those berries are now past shelf life, of course, but the FDA is warning consumers who froze them for later consumption to go ahead and throw them out. Montana State Crime Lab is reducing a backlog of cases and being recognized for it. The American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors says the Missoula-based investigation team is one of the best in the nation for its efficiency. The Montana DOJ's Forensic Science Division is one of just 13 laboratories out of nearly 200 candidates to be honored. In the past, examining fingerprints slowed the lab down, so they did something about it.
We did some outsourcing where we sent cases to other places to work for us. We paid them to do the work, and we were able to get their backlog down to where they're able to maintain with what's coming in.
And another key to success, the Montana State Crime Lab provides regular training for its scientists to keep them up on the latest areas of research. And this morning we are celebrating the teamwork of Billings first responders. During yesterday's rainy early morning hours, firefighters were called to the rims to save a woman who had fallen off. Billings police came too, and after several recent reported mountain lion sightings, the officers kept watch to make sure firefighters could focus on the task at hand rather than a potential wildlife encounter. The rescue was successful. And severe weather is causing major problems in South Dakota and Minnesota. One town was struck by a possible tornado that damaged or destroyed dozens of homes. CBS's Bradley Blackburn has the latest on the recovery.
From the air, you can see the trail of destruction, the path of a suspected tornado in Ferreta, Minnesota. It snapped trees, ripped off roofs, and county officials say at one point cut off all roads leading to town.
There's so many trees and homes. I would say there's at least 75 to 100 structures that are totaled or severely damaged.
Fire Chief Stephen Van Luke said the storm damaged the firehouse. Crews went home to home, but thankfully found no fatalities or serious injuries. Still, many people are displaced.
The Red Cross has been here. They've been helping people find a spot to stay temporarily. So, yeah, everybody's coming together.
The severe weather system barreled through Minnesota on Memorial Day. It dumped heavy rain and left tens of thousands of people without power.
There were about 3 booms, and then you could see the sparks on the power lines.
At one point, more than 1 million Minnesotans were under a tornado watch, a rare event in this region. In Ashby, dark clouds sent families scrambling for cover.
Came right through our garage, hit it. Luckily, it didn't hit any of our house.
Severe storms also struck Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where uprooted trees crashed through homes, crushed cars, and frightened residents in the middle of the night.
Our bedroom window is right there. It would have gone across our bed.
Those severe storms are now making their way east, predicted to stretch from as far north as Michigan all the way down into Texas. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News.
Some 50,000 people in Minnesota are still without power this morning. In Virginia, jury deliberations resumed today in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation trial. The case centers on a 2018 op-ed in which Heard described herself as a domestic abuse survivor. The op-ed didn't mention the Pirates of the Caribbean actor, but Depp says the implication was clear and was based on lies. Heard told the court the article wasn't about Depp, but testified that he did abuse her. Depp revealed evidence that he claims shows he was actually the victim of abuse at the hands of Heard. And now to the fight against COVID-19. While the death rate is down, the number of daily cases is more than 5 times higher than this time last year. Medical researchers are investigating so-called COVID rebound, a reemergence of symptoms after patients take a popular antiviral pill. Here's CBS's Dr. John LaPook with more.
As COVID cases continue to rise, Paxlovid is being prescribed to try to keep high-risk patients out of the hospital. But now, the CDC is warning of potential COVID-19 rebound after a 5-day course of the treatment.
If you take Paxlovid, you might get symptoms again. We haven't yet seen anybody who has returned with symptoms needing to go to the hospital, so generally a milder course.
After a patient recovers, rebound has been reported to occur 2 to 8 days later. Still, the CDC says the benefits of taking Paxlovid far outweigh the risks. Among unvaccinated people at high risk for severe disease, it reduced the risk of hospitalization and death by nearly 90%.
I managed to avoid COVID infection for over 2 years.
Infectious disease expert Dr. David Ho tested positive for COVID after attending a COVID conference. He took Paxlovid and his symptoms went away.
Were you surprised when you got symptoms again and tested positive?
I was totally shocked. I did not expect that, and that's because I had tested negative 6 consecutive days, including 2 PCR.
Pfizer, the maker of Paxlovid, says it is currently seeing a rebound rate of about 2%, but is continuing to monitor patients.
It sounds like the risk isn't so much that they could get very ill again, but that they might unknowingly go out and infect somebody else?
Exactly.
And if COVID does return, Dr. Walensky has this advice.
They should test, they should put their mask back on, and if their test is positive, restart the isolation protocol.
Dr. John LaPook, CBS News, New York.
A new experimental drug could provide more hope for people with Lou Gehrig's disease, also known as ALS. Reporter Ashar Qureshi shows us how it works.
Inside this state-of-the-art Northwestern University lab, scientists have invented a new experimental drug to treat amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease.
All of a sudden, you feel weakness in your arms, in your legs, you can't swallow, you can't speak, and you can't move, and your breathing ability is also reduced, and after a while, you get stuck in your body.
The fatal nerve disease has few treatments, with most only surviving between 2 and 5 years after a diagnosis, though some can live a bit longer.
The patient actually knows what's happening to their body every day and sees that it's getting worse by the day, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Dr. Richard Silverman is a renowned scientist with an expertise in chemistry, molecular biosciences, and pharmacology. He came to worldwide prominence after inventing the anti-seizure and pain medication Lyrica, which has generated billions of dollars for Pfizer.
I think NU9 is his next baby, and I think NU9 is going to be the second Lyrica for neurodegenerative diseases.
Hande Ozdenlaer, an associate professor of neurology at Northwestern, says NU9, now called AKV9, could be more effective than anything else on the market currently used to treat ALS.
We have, for the first time, a molecule that actually has the ability to improve the health of the diseased motor neurons in many different aspects.
Ozdenlaer says while there's no translation from extending the lifespan of a mouse to that of a human patient, they can find that translation at the cellular level, which is why they focused on improving the health of the upper and lower neurons.
Once their health is improved, that's going to improve their circuitry, that's going to help their ability to move, and that's how we will eradicate the disease.
Deteriorating axons contribute to the rapid and fatal paralysis of ALS patients. Scientists say in animal studies this compound actually stops degeneration to the point where diseased neurons become similar to healthy control neurons after 60 days of treatment.
We're hoping that means that it not only maintains it, but corrects the degeneration as well.
AKV9 is now moving toward clinical trials. Silverman's own company is carrying out animal safety studies to determine dosage levels and potential toxic effects. Their hope is to receive FDA approval as an investigational drug and move into human trials by early next year.
It could be another year after that before patients actually will be able to take it.
If it gets approved, it would provide a new glimmer of hope for those living with this fatal disease. I'm Usher Qureshi reporting.
Mourners are gathering in Uvalde, Texas for the first funerals for victims of the elementary school mass shooting that left 19 children and 2 of their teachers dead. Today, 10-year-old Amerie Jo Garza is being laid to rest as this small town tries to work through the pain. This week alone, services are planned for 11 children and a teacher. Funerals are scheduled nearly every day through June 15th. And meanwhile, the gun debate is expected to rage on in Congress in the coming weeks. For more on that, we're joined by reporter Joe St. George, who is live in Washington, D.C. And good morning, Joe. Tell us about gun reform. Does any of it have an actual chance of passing?
Well, you know, I will say this. The fact that Republicans and Democrats are meeting today, not in person here at the Capitol, but via Zoom because it's a recess week here in Washington. The fact that a Zoom meeting is happening between Republicans and Democrats to try to establish a basic framework to go forward with negotiations, that is news in and of itself because, Diane, I can't tell you how many times in the last year and a half after a tragic shooting somewhere in our country, you know, I've been asked the question by family members or friends or anchors like you, Diane, you know, does anything have a chance of passing? And the answer I would typically say is, I don't think so. There is a chance as we chat right now that something could happen. What are the leading possible reforms? We can share with those again on the screen for you. The nationwide red flag law, I think, is the leading possible reform. That would allow law enforcement to temporarily seize guns from individuals deemed a threat by a judge. Why does that have the greatest chance? Well, a number of Republican states have this in place already, 19 states total. They're going to discuss new gun storage laws, perhaps expanded background checks as well. So there's a chance something happens here. But you know this, Diane, I think time is the most important. That's why we're talking about this 1 week after the shooting, because we've learned something throughout all of these mass shootings over the years, and that the longer time passes, the less likely new legislation can happen. People tend to move on, and lawmakers tend to move on. So that's why we're continuing to follow this every step of the way. It's an important topic, and time really matters here.
Right, time of the essence there. Well, the law enforcement response to the tragedy is now under federal investigation. Could it change how police respond going forward? What do you think?
There's always a chance, and that's really what the DOJ is looking into here. They've launched a review into the law enforcement in Uvalde, how they responded to this. Basically, so what happened there, has a better chance of being responded to. We know that an hour passed or so between the shooter entered the school and when the tactical units actually went in. And we have a list of what the country has learned after some of the country's worst mass shootings. Columbine in 1999 taught police, you got to move in. You can't set up a perimeter. You can't wait for a hostage negotiator. You got to move in. That was really a practice-changing event. In 2012, after Aurora Theater shooting, dispatchers had better training. EMS officials had better guidance so they could get through traffic. They actually struggled to get their ambulances close to the theater outside of Denver, Colorado during that shooting. The Orlando Pulse nightclub better informed police how to deal with hostages following a mass shooting as well. What will this teach us? I think time it's too early to tell. This will be a months-long investigation. They're going to interview every officer that was on the scene that tragic day 1 week ago.
Right. All right, Joe, well, a lot to learn from history, unfortunately, and we will keep everyone posted on the latest. We want to thank you so much for joining us from D.C. today, Joe. Yeah. Well, police in Paris took a man into custody after they say he threw a piece of cake at the Mona Lisa. The painting hangs behind a thick piece of glass at the Louvre Museum and was not damaged. Police say the man disguised himself as a woman in a wheelchair and shouted at people to think of planet Earth after he threw the cake. The Mona Lisa has been through a lot in its lifetime. It was stolen by a museum employee in 1911 and was damaged by an acid attack in the 1950s. And thanks so much for watching Billings' only local morning newscast.